Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast Beyond. Tammy Zagarelli, and this is my co-host, Mark Zagarelli.
Hi, Tammy. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. And on this podcast, we're hoping that we're walking you on a journey that we're on from unhappiness to happiness. And we talk a little bit about what's going on in our own lives, and we talk a little bit about the sort of fundamentals of both of our coaching. I'm a life coach. Mark is an education coach and an author and a speaker and many more things. So why don't we get into some of the stories and some of the principles and some of the ideas that we would like to share today?
That sounds great to me. And I was telling you right a little before the podcast that because I thought this was a good way to potentially start things off. I was having a relatively deep conversation with a new friend here. I'm in Malaysia, by the way. I'm not sure if I mentioned that last time, but I'm out of Thailand. I'm in Malaysia, and I met someone. And sometimes you could just go straight to a deep conversation with a new person, and it's a good feeling. And since he's a bit younger than I am, he was asking me sort of questions about life, like from my perspective to his perspective. And one of the things that we hit on is, for example, I mentioned Tammyism number one, which is you can't lose anything that's yours, you can't have anything that's not. And
That's it. It's actually it's the fundamental principle of my coaching. And just to cut in, you created the name Tammyisms
I
because I
did.
repeat things so often. And that has been helpful to my clients, the repetition of certain ideas and being able to create language around them. So continue.
But that was exactly what came up for us was two things. One is I said, I can't remember whether he was worried about a job or the, like life stuff, trying to figure out what his life was about. And I said, you can't lose anything that's yours, you can't have anything that's not. And immediately the thing that he said was, oh my God, that's so true. It was like you could just see on his face was just instant recognition, instant resonance. And he said, I know that. I know that. And then we kept getting on things that I kept just, sort of putting in little pieces of the puzzle. And each time he would say, like, oh my God, that's so true. And it's good. It's like you're not telling me anything I don't know, but it's just really good to hear it repeated. It's just like going around and sort of, touching base with true things in my life. He just said it was very helpful, the repetition. And I thought I wanted to bring that here because lest anybody say like, oh, well, I've heard this from you guys before. I would like to say straight up, and you'll hear it again. If it's worth saying,
Absolutely.
worth repeating. Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing is that one of the theorisms is that creativity and replace creativity with almost anything, success, happiness is on the other side of repetition. And we're also repeating things that, although they may be recognizable if you hear them, like you can't lose anything that's yours, you can't have anything that's not. Yes, in some way, I've heard that before, but could I recite it in a moment? The idea for me is that, like, when the rug gets pulled out from under me or for a client, I want them to be able to reach for something they've practiced. You can't lose anything that's yours. You can't have anything that's not. You can't be irrelevant. Um, it's a short walk to anywhere you think you can't be. These are Tammyisms that sound like, well, I know I've heard that before, but have you heard it in this language in this way where you can grab it when there's nothing else to hold on to? When things are going sideways in your life, at that moment, can you grab onto it? I don't always, I'm not always able to grab onto things without accessible language. That's the point of making up these little sayings. That's why people speak in metaphors when they want to really get a point across, because we don't need any of this stuff when things are going great. The, I tell people, don't you like enjoy the moment if things are going great. But when things are going off, that's when you need it. I was saying before we got on the podcast that I have a client who's and many clients who are going through job transitions. And it's so stressful, like, hanging on to a job that's not right for them and has never necessarily been right for them. But there's a lot of fear around what am I going to do? You can't lose anything that's yours. You can't have anything that's not. If that job is going to go, in some ways, pulling the band-aid off slowly or whipping it off and having faith that the right thing is on its way to you. If it's not right for you, you're not right for it. And that this is something that was interesting that you said a few podcasts ago. If I'm 5 feet away from you, you're 5 feet away from me. And that was helpful. And then another thought came to me because I believe that if you're not right for a guy, if a guy's not right for you, you're not right for the guy, which
Correct.
is sometimes how we are able to release ourselves from someone that we're afraid to break up with them because maybe we're going to hurt them so badly. And it's like, honey, you think in some ways you're thinking you're more important to this person than fundamentally than you are. Because if he's not right for you, you're keeping him from the person that is right for him. And some people are like, oh, wow. But this really got me
Right.
shocked when I thought about it because I didn't want to believe it in myself. How you feel about other people. Like there are people you're like, yeah, they're okay. Like they're okay. That's how they feel about you.
Yeah, often that's true. These things are very reciprocal. And I was thinking in terms of this could work both ways, not just with like a love affair, with a relationship, but I was thinking about the employee who says like, "Oh, I'm afraid to lose this job because X, Y, and Z." And it's like, well, potentially you're keeping yourself from a better job, and you're also keeping someone else from having this job, which might be perfect for them. And then your boss will have this perfect employee, and all those clients will have this perfect person helping them, and it works both ways.
Exactly.
I've heard people say the same, like, "Oh, I'm afraid to fire this employee because, and then all the reasons, which are like valid reasons, like I don't want to hurt their feelings, that I want to work with them." And it's like maybe sometimes pulling the band-aid off, and I'm not saying just go fire someone indiscriminately, but if someone, you've tried and it's just not genuinely a fit, it's probably not right for them either. It's like let them find the perfect situation and let you find the perfect person. If you're holding on, you may be keeping more than one person and more than one situation from being.
Right. And that is, we did kind of get into depth about that in another podcast. This is a slightly different thing that I'm talking about. And I noticed that it kind of went by you and it went by me because I didn't want to think about this. I am talking more specifically about friends, family, and people that we are sort of having an opinion about that we think is, we're, you know, let's face it, everybody talks behind everybody's back. Good, bad, like no, if you're having a conversation about somebody behind their back, and I don't mean that you're gossiping about them. Maybe you're having some kind of genuine issue with someone in your life and you're talking to your therapist, you're talking to your coach, you're talking. So we're not even, I'm not making this that you're a gossip,
Right. I
but
see that.
I really had to take myself and say, wait a minute. We all have sort of an opinion about every single person that we have in our life. We do.
Agreed.
And
Whether we want to or
and
not.
it's human nature we're looking for, and I love how Brene Brown puts it, to belong, to, like, do I belong in this situation or how do I fit into this situation? I love that language because it does help to change things. But when I think about the people that I think about, a random friend who I adore, but then I think, hmm, they, like when I talk to them, they're not always listening, or I have some sort of little bit of an opinion, and we think so highly of ourselves that we should be able to and we should be able to discern, like, oh, it's just, they're always so busy, or they're XYZ. And I thought to myself, the law of balance, right? If I am having some kind of an opinion about them, take that identical
Yes.
mirror image, because the world is a mirror.
Right.
And how would I feel if that person was saying that about me? And I was like, wow, like that person, this is me talking in my head, my inner guidance, inner critic's going off saying, well, I mean, just because you have that opinion, like you're allowed to have opinions, Tammy, like and they, like we have this view, our inner critic has this view of us that everybody thinks that we're superlative,
We're unimpeachable. We're right.
right?
No one,
And
right. And we don't dig into what they might be saying about us. Right.
right, and could it possibly be that that person is sitting around talking to husband, friend, girlfriend, therapist about us
Hmm.
in that exact language? Well, every time I call, she's always so
Right.
busy, distracted. How much of how much of what we see in another person is actually projection?
Or reflection back on us of something. Some advice that I got years ago was if you've got a grievance with someone, go ahead and I mean like one of two things. It's like don't like spin on it and nurture it and dwell on it and whatever. Either drop it, get over it, really, or talk to them about it.
Have
And
a clarifying conversation.
okay, but here's the thing, and but the advice was very interesting because it was like, it's like, look, if this is something you could just drop it. It's like, I have a grievance. This person's 5 minutes late all the time. Do I really, is this, some, as I say, this is the hill you want to die on. Okay, but let's look at the flip side of this thing. Let's look at the flip side. The flip side is like the person who said this to me was like, go ahead and tell them. It was almost like, I dare you, okay? Because you go to them and say the 5 minute thing, okay? Like, I just want to say that, you're always 5 minutes late to me and you don't respect my time. It's like what you might get back is, okay, if we're gonna go here, if we're gonna go, and this is not retaliatory, this is just cleansing,
I
okay?
know where you're going with this, and
This is
it's
like,
exactly the point
what
of
about
this.
what about you talking on and on and on about your problems, not respecting my time? What about the times when you're 20 minutes late because of an important job interview and it's so important? It's like, what about, like what, physician heal thyself. You will get that. So what
Right.
the thing that I've basically come to is from that advice, it's like, baby, most of the time it's an inside job. If someone is not respecting my time, there is probably a sense in which I am not respecting theirs, and that's the
Bingo, Ringo.
right.
That's the point of this. And I sort of shuddered when I thought about that the idea of real balance is out there.
Right.
And this goes into, I'm sort of organizing the Tammyisms because they're now going into the 20s and 30s of how many there are. And how I got to this was from what right now is Tammyism number 2. It's a short walk to anywhere you think you can't be.
Yes. Yes.
And for so long, that Tammyism was only in the negative for me, which,
Explain that, just so I know what you're saying, but just explain that.
yeah, it's a short walk to anywhere you think you can't be. There were so many times when I've been in situations where you know, hearing somebody in a session talk about the good luck they're having and or the hard work they put in to deserve this particular outcome that they've gotten. And that's all well and good. We should feel good about our progress in life. I want people to. That's the point. But also there's a step beyond, one step beyond, where we sort of get on a high horse about things that we believe in. And we think we've sort of gotten there again all on our own. And it's been this, and I say to people, it references the idea of, you know, be careful of on the way up the ladder, because you're going to see the same people if there's a chance that there's a way down the ladder. It's a short walk to like somebody is a in the dot-com era, there was people who became millionaires and thought they were geniuses, and they may be geniuses, and at the same time they became homeless at some point because that went away. It's a short walk to anywhere you think you can't be. And for a long time that served me, and that always it keeps you understanding that there's a lot going on in this universe and a lot of gratitude that we should have for where we are. But also on the flip side of that flip that pancake, as I say, and we'll get to that another place and time, is it's a short walk to anywhere you think you can't be if you're face planted into rock bottom.
Yeah, that is
Like
true.
like one really good decision can move you through what I call a wormhole in the universe to get you to some place that's miraculous, amazing, and one day earlier seemed impossible.
That's
And
true.
and I have a lot of things around that, like the I was a waitress for 22 years before I started decorative painting, which I started in my mid 30s and then did that for 20 odd years and then became a life coach. And so I remember when I was a waitress thinking, this is it, honey. I don't know if we want to get right into this, but I could.
I think
I don't
it's a
know. It's
good idea. I think I would, because I think it's a great story, and I know where you're going with this because
okay.
I've heard
So
this before.
yeah, there's a place and time. When I say I was waitressing for 22 years, I started waitressing really young. Probably, I remember I was 14,
Yes.
14 when I started at my first waitressing job. And I was untruthful about my age. That's how I got the job.
Yeah.
And it was a, waitress on the boardwalk pizza place, and it's a very exciting time. You're making money. My first job was babysitting, and then second job waitressing, and many things happened. By the age of 35, going on 36, waitressing was pretty depressing for me. And I thought, you know, this is it. And it doesn't mean that I didn't appreciate it, because it was in some ways of why I liked waitressing was that it was a lesson in entrepreneurship. When you have your own section, you make your money based off of what you do. But I was, I didn't have the opportunity to go to college, and I didn't have the money to go to college for reasons that are we'll explain down the line. And so there were moments when I would see my friends coming back from college, coming back from graduate school, and they're like, "How are you?" And the place they would see me was at the restaurant. I worked in a great restaurant. But after a while, it was like, so how was college? How was school? How was graduate school? And they were telling me, and the next question I had to ask them was, would you like baked potatoes, French fries, or rice with your dinner?
Yes.
And
Yes.
for me, at that moment, it wasn't. I was really upset about that, and it's not to put down waitressing, because I've been in and out of it my whole life, and benefited quite, highly from it. But I didn't know how to get out of it. I thought, this is it. And something inside of me kept the more that I disliked and was loathsome about it, the
Resisting. I
more
hear resisting.
resisting. That's
Yeah.
the word I want. Thank you for helping me with word. The more what we resist persists, right? Okay. So I didn't know really how to become any. Do I go back to school? None of these things seem reasonable. Go back to school, study a trade, do many different things. And I sort of was looking around and saying, my unhappiness is affecting the people around me. So I looked, and there was a girl at work. I remember her name was Peggy. I think her name was Peggy. And she was my age, maybe even a few years older. And she was so happy at work. And I said, here I am showing up sort of rumpled and like, thinking that I'm better than this.
Maybe giving, and also maybe giving a little less than your all. Like, I can cut corners. I've been
Tr-
doing this forever, and
True, true. I was, I lost the appreciation for how much I got from this job. And I went up to her and I said, you're so good at what you do, and you're also doing you're you're happy all day long. How do you do that? And she said, well, this isn't, we're providing a really important service here, and it's my day. I want to enjoy it. And I thought, okay. And there was just something light, airy, and amazing about her. So I made a decision. I went home that night and I said, okay, Tammy, instead of saying you're only going to be a waitress for the rest of your life, why don't you say you have the privilege of having a job and being a waitress in a place where you make really, for me, good money? And I said, if this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, I am going to be the best waitress humanly possible. And it was a decision that I made like that. And that night I went to the mall and bought a new white shirt, a new pair of pants, new sneakers. I ironed, before I went to work the next day, I ironed my shirt, got myself together, went to work a half an hour early. And I walked in the door, and the owner, who, I'd been there a long time, I had seniority. So he put up with a lot from me because I was good with the customers. I had people asking me to sit in my section. I was doing a good job. I wasn't doing a great job. Walked in a half an hour early, and he said, are you early? And I was like, yeah. And he said, why? And I said, because I just want to be. I feel like it. Okay. He said, I thought maybe it was later, or the time was, your shift was earlier. Nope. Just came in because I used to kind of come in and eat dinner. We get a free meal, eat dinner on the job, sort of. I came in early, did the right thing. Next day, show up for work. A little bit of a look of like, huh, you're here awfully early. Hmm. Then someone said to me, do you have a new shirt on? I said, yeah. Wow. Was I that rumpled that people notice I'm wearing a new shirt? Yes. And that was that I pulled it off. I mean, I remember being in the bathroom, sort of washing off the apron from the night before instead of now throwing it in the washer and getting it done. So I wanted a change, and I realized that the change was here and where I was. And when you start showing up, I started making better money at the job, enjoying, I would stay late and sort of fill everybody else's salt and peppers.
I
And
remember that's one, and
the,
maybe you should explain because you've told me this story, and I'm more up to speed now because of it. But like, there's the side work, and like waitresses have, and the side
yeah,
work can be a bone of contention among a group of wait staff, right?
absolutely. And the thing, what I always thought was, I started thinking, what would Peggy do? She carried a little piece of cardboard in case the table went wobbly. She would carry a little piece of cardboard and she would say, oh, excuse me. She would just bend down and put it under their table. I mean, and so I thought to myself, wow. And I started doing side work, extra side work. If someone was like getting ready to go out on a date, I said, I'll fill your stuff up for you. And they looked at me like I had six heads for a while. And I thought, wow, am I really that off? So this went on and my energy shifted. And I was feeling good about where I was. I liked the way I looked. I liked the approach I had. And ironically, in the meantime, this was took Peggy got offered a job at a computer company. Now you got to remember, this was I dating myself, but this was the 90s, the early 90s. So it was the really beginning of that. So she left, and I thought, oh, good for her. Where a few months earlier, I wouldn't have thought good for her. I would have thought, she's lucky. She wasn't lucky. She was involved and excited about what she was doing, and people could feel that around her. And as the story goes, I was always I always loved painting. Every time I would talk to you on the phone from you were California, you were here, you were there. I
That's
think
what I'd like to
California mostly.
interject. I'd like to interject real quickly and not derail your story, but to say that I remember a time when I was living in California, you were living in New Jersey, and I came home and we must have spent 5 nights together hanging out, talking. And every single one of those nights, I was in your kitchen. You had rearranged your kitchen, so you'd moved everything to the middle of the room so that the walls were clear. You'd taken all the painting, anything off the walls that you could. And I was sitting
Yeah.
wherever I was allowed. You're basically like, sit there and don't move if we're going to, while you're rolling out the primer coat and then rolling out the code and then doing another code. This is like over 5 days. Okay, so it's finally, by the time I leave, it's finally done. I'm like, oh, this looks wonderful, great. Okay, this is amazing. It was very inspiring to me. And I started thinking about, so I fly home to California. 2 days later, I call you up. I'm like, hey, Tammy, what are you doing? She's like, I'm painting my kitchen. I'm like, she's like, the color wasn't right.
I remember that.
I was like, oh, you chose a purple and didn't like it, and then you went on to a turquoise. I don't know what it was, but it was like, okay,
Painting was my passion back then.
there you
It
go.
just was.
That's how, and the whole time, this is the kicker. This is the like, and then I will let you go back. The whole time, it was like you were rolling the walls up and down, going like, what am I going to do for a living? Like, what do I really want to do for a career? I'm trying to decide, Mark, what do you think I should do? I really need to move on. I just, and it was like, it was the angels were in the room screaming like, people, wake up. What are where's your passion? What are you doing?
Exactly. Always upcycling furniture, finding things on the street and painting them, reupholstering them, fixing them, doing all, it was such a passion for me
You taught
that
me how to transform a room with contact paper. And let me tell you, it's like when you're making, I don't know, bringing home like 250 or $300 a week. I mean, this is going back a few years, right? But
yes,
I had a story in my head. It was like the story in my head was I can't afford to make my house nice. Like my house has to look like a kind of a dump, like, remember Sanford and Son? Remember that show? Kind of like that, like kind of a little dumpy place with like whatever furniture nobody bought at the junk shop, right? Junk shop rejects. And you would take a piece of furniture and put a piece of contact paper on. And I would just say, how is your house so beautiful? And you're like, Mark, you see that over there? That vase? That's a bottle with that I just painted, blue. And suddenly it looks really nice. It cost me it cost me 12 cents.
and this is in the days before Amazon, because now when you look on Amazon, it's like they've got all these great products to use to, and for me, it was like spray paint and a little glitter. And
Right.
back in the day, it was a big deal. But I was, and so when I started being, this ties directly into what we're talking about. I was constantly talking about painting and painting and painting. And oh, I bought this dresser and I painted it. And when I started getting more involved and being a better waitress, just owning where I was at, saying this is just like this job is supporting me. And it was a real change inside of me. And I started enjoying talking to the people that I worked with rather than tolerating the people that I was working with. And I started talking about some of the things that were important to me. I'm painting and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And oh, my apartment's looking so cool. Would you like to come over? I started getting involved in where I was working. And in that time, it wasn't even 6 months. I wish I had written the days on the calendar from the moment I made the decision, I am going to be the best waitress that I can possibly be. It wasn't 6 months from that day where I got involved in my jobs, put in the extra work, started making better money. So I remember thinking to myself, I was starting to make about $400 a week. And that was enormous because all of a sudden I'm working Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. Like I just sort of, I started working the better nights of the week and getting that little extra tip took you from a $300 a week to a $400 a week. It was a big deal. And at the same time, the owner of the owner of the business said to me, we've had a leak in the back, and they had a decorative painted restaurant. I keep hearing you talk about painting. Do you think you can fix that decorative painted wall? And I said, well, I can give it a try. Well, because you're talking about painting all the time. And so I did, and it turned out really, really nice. It turned out really good. And she was so appreciative and went back to, and then a friend of mine said, you waitress at night and you always talk about painting. Would you want to come to work for me during the day doing something called decorative painting, faux finishing, decorative painting? There was really the beginning of that, and it became the heyday of that. So I did that and at the time it was $15 an hour during the day. That was enormous money for me. And then go to work at night.
Yes.
And
And we
as
have to take these
the
numbers and think about it in terms of
well, we're going
two
to take
things.
these
One, in
numbers
terms
up
of
another level.
old numbers, and then also like the poverty that we were at. Go on.
Yes. So then the unimaginable happens, the magical. The miraculous happens. 6 months in, I've painted one wall at the restaurant. I'm sort of working a few days a week with this person who was decorative painting. And she said to me, wow, you're such a big help. I'm doing a whole house and I can't get to 2 rooms. I said, well, I don't know how to decorative paint. She said, you've been working with me for a few months now. You can figure this out. And so I said, I'm going to have to work, sort of like 4 days in a row and take off some time from waitressing to really commit to doing a room or two in this house. And again, this is no more than 6 months from that decision.
The decision
In
to be a
four
great waitress.
to be a great waitress. In 4 days, I made $1,400.
Right.
More money than I had made ever in my life doing decorative painting. And that was, we were 36 I was 36 when this happened. And that launched me into a career that I didn't know it even existed, decorative painting. And because I'd been doing such a good job as a waitress, the owner said, I said to the owner, I sat down, I said, can I keep some waitressing shifts? But I think I have a job that I can do. And I'd been working there for years. They liked me already. I was 6 months into doing great work. And remember, if it takes about 6 months, people will not remember the person that you used to be. That's about it. People really remember who you are in about the past 6 months. He was like, yeah, feel free to come and go, make your schedule. You've earned this. I was out of that job and never looked back for 20 years.
That's
I
amazing.
just kept getting job after job after job meeting. And that was it was a joy for me for so many years to be able to do that, making money that I probably would have never been able to make without. And eventually I went back to art school and did a bunch of things like that, but not for at least a year or so into that decorative painting career. That was an enormous change for me and like a gift from God. So what can one decision, how
Mhm.
can one decision change your life? It's a short walk
That's right.
to anywhere you think you can't be.
And there were several things you said in there that I was taking little notes because I was thinking like I don't want to break in on every single word you say
No, it's
at
fine.
all, but no. So one of the things you said, so like let's see. Okay, I'm going to start with I have an experience with like it could be. Remember when you used to put money in toll booths? Now the toll booth has been essentially obsoleted, right? Like we zip through with our
With
Easy Pass or whatever they call it in your state,
yeah.
wherever you are, or your country. They have them here in Malaysia. People just zip by, or they like taxi drivers lean out the window with a little spatula with a ticket thing attached. Like it's kind of cute. So but remember the toll booth, and it's like I would just like after you told me the waitressing story, I would reflect, and again, like trying not to be judgmental, like I'm trying not to be judgmental with this and maybe failing a little and succeeding a little, but you can't help but notice so you're waiting on a line and then you get to the toll booth. And in some cases, a toll collector. Now it's always like it's $1.25, right? So, so I like how many times a day does someone get handed $2, right? $2, and then it's like $2. And it's like it's happening for the first time in their entire universe. It's like $2. So I take the $2 and I put it in the drawer. And then I think about it. It's supposed to be 75 cents change. So I take one, two, three quarters out, and then I come over here and I hand them. And it's just you're just thinking like, and then like
And
that's
that's why they invented Easy Pass.
one, but that's one person's reality in that, and they're doing that like 500 times a day or whatever.
They're
So
doing
what,
it all day long, so they're taking their time because this is their job, and
but that's
they're
what I mean.
just
But
they're
but
not
it
worried
is.
about you.
But then like other times I see people and I would just like hand them the $2 and they'd be like almost with one ninja motion, like ninja magic. There's like I hand them the $2 and they're like boom, like the change in the hand. And I'm like, wow, what just happened? And they're like, bye. And like they're like, hi, how are you today? Boom. Hi, how are you? It's so nice to see you. But like, and I would notice because you go through the toll booth every day and you see there's like five different people and you get to know who they are. And it's this one woman who just always seems to have a smile on her face and she's putting the money in and she's making it like a positive experience because I only experience it for 12 seconds in the course of my day. She's doing this all day. So the question is, do I want to do this all day, like making it a miserable, passive aggressive experience, or do I want to do it like, ninja toll
Also,
taker?
like where I was at too was I had such a lack of gratitude for the fact that I had the ability to make back then $300 or $400 a week, which was like an astronomical amount of money when you think about the at that time what I don't even know what the minimum wage was. It was something like $5
Right.
you know an hour. And this waitressing job, which I was starting to turn my nose up at, like I was, because it's just that could have gone this way. It's a short walk to anywhere you think you can't be. I
Right.
happened to be fortunate enough to make a decision that took me to somewhere I wanted to be, but it could have been, I don't care how long you've been here, honey, you're fired. And
Right.
lack of gratitude can take you to two different places.
It
That's the
absolutely
point
can.
of it's a short walk. You are not above the owner coming in one day and saying, I don't, you've been here for 8 years. I get that. You're a little bored, Tammy, but slap a
Follow your
smile on your
bliss
face.
somewhere else. Right. Go follow
Right.
it out the
It
door.
it was like catching myself ahead of time was I knew in myself in some ways my lack of gratitude. I could feel this slipping away. Was it going to slip away to something better? You know, Preemptively, I made the decision to get some gratitude, and I was reading a lot of self-help books, and I had spent some time in therapy due to things like charity care. I remember when I used to go to one of the greatest therapists I ever had. It was she was when I was very young. I went through charity care, and she was $5 a session. We talked about these things, but it could have gone either way. And by the grace of God, I made the decision to start appreciating, and those decisions change things.
That they
That's it.
do.
They change
That
things,
they
and
do.
and the repeatable, that kind of change in oneself has not just happened for me the waitressing time. That's happened on purpose more times because of that experience and the flash before my eyes that I happened to make a decision that moved me through a wormhole in the universe to from waitressing to something that in some ways I felt like I would have never seen if I had been so negative. I would have still been painting my apartments, which I
Lord knows
still painting my
you do. Yeah,
apartments.
well, yeah, we can see. But
I mean,
the other thing I wanted to say, if I
oh
can,
no, we have to give you some credit here. We
what's
have to give
that?
you some credit here.
Sure, I'll take
I
credit.
you
What do
yes,
I
you're gonna
take
get some
credit for right
credit
now?
because you we can't talk about toll booths without talking about your random acts of kindness that always make me so feel so good. Okay, you know, right? You
I
know what I'm gonna
forgot
say.
about that. I totally forgot when in
Well,
talking
you've
about
been
toll,
away from New Jersey for a long
I've
time,
been
and
well, but
so
also toll booths have kind of gone out. But that's a I don't know if it's a it's
well,
a.
let me tell the story
I'll let
because
you tell it.
it's
Okay.
hard to tell it about yourself. Whenever I would be following you going somewhere, and we would have to inevitably go through a toll booth to get anywhere when we were younger. So you would always not only pay for yourself when you went through a toll booth, but you would pay for the person behind you, even if it was $1.50 for the toll.
Right.
And I was shocked. I was like, because I would see people waving at you like, like this, and I'm like, what are people waving? Because I was not necessarily behind you in the toll booth. I might have been in the toll booth next to you, and I would see people, and then you finally told me that you did this, and I thought that's interesting that you're talking about toll booths. You made them better for you too.
I had totally forgotten about that, and it's like
I never forgot about
it
that.
was absolutely the most fun. Like I don't know where I got on it. I have no idea whether I heard it or something that someone suggested or whatever. The random act of kindness, but the random act of kindness I got on was every time I went through a toll booth, it was $1.50, whatever it was. I would say to the person, I would say to the toll booth guy person, this is for me and this is for the person behind me. And like sometimes they would stop and say like, "Oh, do you know that person?" And I say, "No." And they like they would go like, "Wow, that's really nice of you." That so there was one little like nice, but then like the other person, a lot of times I'm driving along and then the person has made it a point to speed and put their lives and others at risk to to catch up to me on the road and then be like beep 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 like hey man I'm like with like a guy his wife and three kids in the car and all going like that's awesome, that's so nice of you, thank you. It's like
Big
that
deal. Those
that
little things
cost me
make
a
the
dollar
difference
fifty. You don't get a high like that for $1.50. You spend a lot more and get a lot less high for the other kinds of highs, right?
for sure. For sure. Where were you going before I cut you off? Sorry.
Oh yeah, okay. So the other, thank you. I totally forgot about the total thing. So you were talking about, and this leads right into the education sort of coaching type of thing, but I don't, but in a sense, you mentioned that while you were talking about before your transformation in waitressing, that you were doing, I finger quoting, doing a good job. Like I was doing a good job. Like you weren't on the verge of getting fired or anything like that. You were just doing a
No.
good, showing up. And so yada, yada. What that reminded me of is I would say when I was, and there's not as much classroom teaching these days, there's a lot more online teaching for me these days. But when I was in the classroom in, teaching SAT classes or ACT classes, like you get, like you can't do math problems for like 3 hours a day and expect children to live, and want to continue living, right? And want, stay in the room. So, we'd get off onto something, but I would like, one of my things I would get off onto was, I'd say like, the way the world is different from the classroom, and like, well, we know a whole lot of ways, like one way in particular. Okay, what grades can you get in a classroom? And they would say A, B, C, D, F, right? I'm like, okay, yes. Okay, do you know you can only get 3 grades in life? And they, what do you mean by that? And I say,
Yeah, I'm asking, what do you mean by that?
right,
I don't
exactly.
think I remember this.
You can only get like and I would say specifically in a job, but also in life. I'm willing to go out on a limb and say in life, there's only 3 grades in life, A, B, and F. Okay. So here's what that looks like.
Oh, I
You
like this.
you get an A when you are putting something at the very top of the two, three, maybe four things that you are dedicating yourself to. Okay. Einstein got an A in physics. Okay. Einstein got an A in physics. He might not have got an A in marriage or raising his kids or, there's a whole lot of things. I don't know what he got. Okay. But like you could get an A, and usually it's like for a very short amount of time, I mean, or it's the thing that you're dedicated to. You're getting an A, which means you're at the top of your game. You're putting in everything. It is one of the priorities of your life. Okay, that's an A. What's a B? A B is very good, sustainable work. It's like for example, the guy who works on Wall Street for 2 years and kills it for 2 years, and then gets married and starts having a life, like has a kid, and all of a sudden now it's like he's doing B work. B work is I'm still doing a great job. I'm showing up. It's just if you put a gun to my head and said you need to choose between this job and your kid, take the job. I don't care, right? That's B work. Still doing great work, but it's just not at that superhuman level. And then it's like, oh, so, and then my kids would say like, well, what about C and D? And I'm like, there is no C and D. There's F. Okay. You're either doing superhuman, amazing work that everybody's talking about, or you're doing good, sustainable work that everybody on the team is happy with, and you have a life, or you get like one review where someone says to you, like, I would call this a C, but what we actually call this is an F. You're not making it, okay? You're not making it. And we're telling you that. And we need you to bring up to at least a B because you're not going to get two of those. You're not going to just hang out and get, a series. You're not going to, in other words, you can't just get through with C's for the rest of your life. There is no C. It's an F. And so we're saying bring it out of the F zone back into the B zone, or we're going to have to find someone else. And this goes for a marriage, this goes for friendships, this goes for anything that you're doing. It's like, I understand if you're not doing A and everything, nobody possibly could. But if you're not doing a B, at least B work, you're failing. And acknowledge it.
Right. And there is a lot of there's especially now where people can, I'm a life coach. Before COVID, people used to come see me in person. There was no perception or conception of the idea that we're going to meet on Zoom.
No.
And that entire paradigm changed. So now I know you are in Malaysia right now and you have clients all over the world
Right.
as well as I do. Before I was living in Manhattan, living in New York City, because the first thing I did when, becoming a life coach was move to New York, where's the most concentrated area of people that you could possibly get, a job, or have people come see you is in Manhattan. It's, especially with my background, I was, if you're living in a small town, how many people are you going to, so, but now why are people can hire and fire you like this, which they will,
And there's
is
so
when
many people available to
they
do
can
the
hire someone
job.
in Malaysia
That's
to
right.
fill your job.
And potentially for a lot less money. Right.
Right. Right.
Right.
So, this is when people say, why work on yourself? That's it's an unspoken question. You know, why is so and so always working on themselves? The real answer for that question is because I'm unhappy and I want to be happier. So that's the personal reason to work on yourself. There are a lot of external reasons to work on yourself. Better job, more money, a better lifestyle, all those things. But really, most people are trying to come out of pain and into happiness. And that's the reason to work on yourself. But there are some very real practical reasons in this world to be working on yourself as well. I don't know if this is an interesting thing where I want to talk about the people that we surround ourselves with a little bit. This is a new experience for me of picking and choosing the people that we spend our time with. And I was watching another coach, and it was a he. And I realized that his basic idea about people is that if they're not doing well, what they need to work on is the problem of being lazy, which
Hmm.
I think is a non problem. It was horrifying, like really upsetting and horrifying to me that anyone as a coach would think that people aren't trying hard enough. If there's somebody and if you are doing C-level work at your job, either or D-level work at your job, it is probably because you're a misfit. It's not a fit for you in the job, or you are so unhappy there that you don't want to be there. And at the same time, your appearance of being lazy is really that you just need to follow the idea that following something that makes you happier, either become happier in the job, which is the choice that I made at that waitressing job, or find a job that makes you happier if you have the ability to do that. But the idea that we if you're not doing A or B level work, and I like that, I'm going to keep that forever. You probably need to take a look at what you're doing and why you're doing it, because it's happiness and laziness are not appear to be connected. I was watching somebody coach someone else, and what they were talking about to them was, well, I think that you're unsuccessful at this because you're lazy.
Hmm.
A coach said that to somebody.
That's a hard uh that's a hard way to look at something. Would you say that I think inner critic, not inner guidance?
Right. Bingo, ringo. My point is that language and the way that we think about ourselves and the way that we're actually being coached to in this world. Somebody is out there saying, you're not good at this because you're not trying hard enough. When most likely you're not good at this because you're not a fit for this. And you can leave it there. But in a coaching session I had yesterday, somebody was struggling with their job. And the fit was so off in the job. And instead of hearing, I think to myself, what is life coaching about? For me, about why teach about inner critic, inner guidance? Because who's to say as a coach we're coming from inner guidance? Is what are we, you were saying, what is this podcast about? You can be a coach and give people bad advice
Oh
and
yeah.
say, I think that you're not trying hard enough and you should work on your procrastination, your laziness. And I thought, how come I've never met a client who's procrastinating for any of the wrong reasons? I've never met a client who's lazy. I've only met a client who doesn't know what they're amazing at. They're amazing at 16 different things, and they're in a job that doesn't appreciate any of those 16 things. If they were in a job, they're overly, they're overly emotional in their job.
I was thinking of I was working, so I was going to say in most cases when I'm working with kids on SAT, I mean, like, first of all, it's selecting for kids who want to go to college, have chosen to go to college, are wanting to get, I mean, like, yeah, I know sometimes, kids are like, their parents are telling them to do this, but they're on board. They're basically on board because, I was thinking about this one kid. I mean, he must be like, out of college now for 4 or 5 years. So that's how long ago this was. But at the time he was 16 years old. He was one of this group. I was doing this whole group of lacrosse players. Shout out to all the lacrosse players I have ever done SAT coaching for because they were all knew each other. And it was like this big group of kids and they've all gone on to college and doing great things. But this one boy, we were working one-on-one and I was, I was feeling this resistance from him that felt to me in the moment like a little bit of passive aggressive. And so I wasn't like, but I was a little bit like, like, come on, what's going on with you? Like a little bit of push and a little bit of what's going on, a little bit of inquiry. And like my feeling towards him before I said that was, oh, you're kind of like blowing it off and not trying. You're kind of wasting my time here, a little around the edges. And I didn't express that. But when I said that, he was like, it almost like I thought he was almost bursting into tears. He was like, yeah, but I keep getting the questions wrong and I don't know what, and it's just really hard. And like, but it was like,
That's it right there.
right.
That moment,
Yeah.
the moment
Very
you asked,
humanizing. Very humanized.
The
Yes.
humanizing question. This
Right.
is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The we're gonna hold that story. I'm not gonna hold you to finishing that story, but
Sure.
that's what I'm talking about. When we talked in the maybe it was the last podcast or the one before about changing a paradigm of
Right.
coming from right of the bad sayings of the 20th century, tough love. Like we're a coach, the coach of today. Like I'm going to give you some tough love. It's like
Right.
nobody needs it. There, if you have you're sitting in a position of coaching, you're an education coach, you're guiding these young people
Yes.
to get it to create what you're doing is you're helping them to create an identity of who they are.
Right.
And as adults, we're like a little bit around the edges or coaches of like, like not trying hard enough.
Right.
Nobody is not trying hard enough.
That's right.
We are treading water, drowning. And what we need is someone to reach in and say,
Like
come
I'm
on,
pulling you
let
out.
me help
Well,
you.
what it was very, for me, the transformation was it was very humanizing because I went from like having a story in my head of like, oh, this kid is just like blowing this off, like, and not respecting me, not respecting the blah, 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 blah. Well, first of all about me, all about me, all about me, right? Not about the person, not about
True.
the young person who I'm supposed to be mentoring, all about me and my ego. And then but somehow I guess I was given the grace of asking in a way that wasn't because I didn't come at him and say like you're not trying, like what's wrong with you? I didn't do that. I would never. I mean,
You don't have that in you.
I don't
So
really have that in me. Certainly not with
you
certainly
do
not with
not.
younger people, And but when I said that, it was like what broke open for me was he wasn't being passive aggressive. He was dying a thousand deaths because he kept thinking he was doing the work, getting the right answer, and then it wasn't right. So when he was
Exactly.
able to be vulnerable and just say, like, my life sucks because I'm not doing, like it opened my heart because then I could be,
100%.
hey man, like, like, wait a minute. Like it's like because at the moment you can see like I'm not going to college. I'm going to be like cleaning floors for the rest of my life. Like he has a picture in his head of like what's not going to happen in his life. And it's like, hey man, like you're going to do this. You're going to do this. And now I can be on his, we could be on the same side and I can be
There you
showing him
go.
how to go as opposed to opposed. Right.
Right. And that's when I'm looking and I'm saying, who do we, this is sort of how I explain to my clients. It was the only way that I could visualize it in my own mind. We are so affected by just the people, the normal, the parents, the friends, the people in our life. And then when we see someone in an authority position, like your life coach comes in, you're a teacher and you teach some little kids. I mean, that down the road, you have to show what you do with these. You're teaching 3 and 4 year olds math that I could never even attempt. It's just, oh my goodness. Look it up, guys. Look him up because you're gonna to see Mark's work is just it's beyond. Okay, that's what we're gonna keep going back to that. But when I'm scrolling through Instagram and I'm always interested in what are other life coaches doing. Wow, and what differentiates me? Like what differentiates me? And I got it in. I watched a video of this coach coaching somebody, and I was like, my blood ran cold because I thought not so this is a person in an authority position. They can be your doctors. I mean, sometimes doctors in a white coat can tell you something and they've shown the profound effects of just putting on a white coat and having an effect on people. I mean, you've seen that those
I'm not a
studies.
doctor, but I play one on TV, and it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
I will give away all my power to you because of that.
We saw that with mom when she was sick. I mean, a doctor came in and was going to give her a surgery she didn't need.
That's right. That's right.
And so,
Literally,
you
literally.
know,
Yeah. And
literally
changed
didn't
the
need.
medication in ways that were like entirely unauthorized, unwise, unwarranted, and without even a proper examination of,
Right. But she was of the generation, as many people are, you don't question the doctor.
right.
And they've said, they've even shown, like, you know, there's the studies they've done where they've put someone in a white coat and had people, press a buzzer that because
Milgram experiment. Yes. So like the
they
Milgram experiment where, right. And that was back in the 60s. And that was, but the, like, but, the horn rim
tell
glasses,
someone,
the white coat and the clipboard, right? You put those, like this and then the doctor was saying like, please continue with the experiment. It's like, and turning
well,
like,
you got to
let's
tell them what
turn
the
up.
experiment is. There's people
Right.
sitting in another room
Yeah.
and they're all actors in the other room. And you have a person who's not an actor, a real person come in, the doctor's an actor, and they say, press this button. We're doing an experiment. And you start hearing the person in the other room, the actor, screaming in pain.
Right.
And the
Please
doctor says, this is
press this button, like administer a shock every time this person gets a question wrong. And the person on the other side is pretending to get questions wrong and pretending they're getting shocked. And you can hear the guy on the other side of the room like screaming and banging on the wall and saying, "Stop this, stop this." And then the doctor with the clipboard is like, "Please continue with the experiment." It will be very important if this experiment isn't completed. It will have profoundly bad effects like that. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll just keep pressing. How much is up to now? It's up to 700 volts. Like,
right. And almost everybody, I don't know the percentages, the study's very famous, but
a
almost
surprisingly large
everybody
percentage of people, right?
press the button to the point where all of a sudden the person stops screaming.
And
They
they
pretends to be
sound like
dead.
they're just like they're no longer screaming. They're just presumed dead. Yes, yes, right.
And I'm
And they're
laughing
like,
because
please continue to please continue to shock his rotting corpse because science depends on this.
right, but this shows the profound effect that that people in power positions, people that are um teachers, mentors, all that, but we don't even realize that just the normal everyday people in our life are having this kind of an effect on us.
Right.
So I've been saying, well, what differentiates my coaching and my philosophy when I've been scrolling through Instagram and there's so many good coaches. I mean, just great idea after great idea. And then you see something and you're waiting for the punchline. Like you're lazy and you're just not trying hard enough. And this was an actual coaching session I was watching and I kept waiting for the punchline and there was none. This was just, I'm giving you tough love because I care about you. It's like, wow. And I realized that there are two different schools of thought. And this coaching, and I believe yours, is based on what I'm seeing is a relatively new idea that you don't know how amazing you are.
Yes.
That if you're not doing well that if a person is not come from a place of knowing, in my world, I know the things that help me are when people can see things in me I can't see in myself, see the best in me.
That's right.
My inner critic, as we're going to go back to inner guidance, inner critic in every one of these podcasts, my inner critic can give you the list alphabetized in order, in triplicate about all of my flaws. I know them. That kid who was getting the problems wrong that you were tutoring, coaching, he knew what he knew was that he wasn't good enough.
That's
But
right.
that,
That
right, but
story
that knowing,
was well taught. Right.
right. And it was also 100% wrong.
Correct.
Our, our inner critic is so sure of how bad we are and how dumb we are and the things in our life that reinforce that negativity can happen as we went into last week. We're not going to go into this week. Sometimes that reinforcement happens by accident, by parents, by teachers, but there should be a different what I'm like, hopefully we're bringing to the light is a different knowing, a different
Absolutely.
listening, a different observation. And somebody new asked me, a client asked, what are you going to do for me? And I said, I am going to figure out everything. We are going to figure out everything that's amazing about you. And then I'm going to hold that vision so tight that every time you forget it, I'm going to remind you of it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they're like, well, what about working on my problems? I said, what problems? And they were really like, what do you mean, what problems? That's the question that
Right.
your inner critic wants you to constantly ask.
That's right.
What about my problems? You know, don't you think somebody doesn't know that they're acting lazy,
Hmm.
that they're being perceived as lazy, that they are procrastinating? What about the idea of you're procrastinating because you're pursuing something you don't love?
Right.
And how do we get you to okay, you got to stay in this for a while, but how do we get you to find the things that light you up, that make you, there is a fully realized version of you, self expressed, joyful, and happy, that someone, hopefully the people that love you in your life, can start to get on board with. And also your mentors can hold that vision, can ask you to, and work with you to understand how many things there are that are amazing about you that you don't pursue or think of as valuable because someone said that's not valuable.
Right.
And maybe I'm been, you know me, I've been called over emotional. Mom used to call me waterworks. Here come the waterworks. And I worked on changing that until the day that I thought, somebody had said to me, "Did you ever think of the fact that you're emotional because you're so intuitive?" Hmm. And maybe pursuing a job, the like, if you're gonna pursue a job, accounting isn't gonna be it.
Right.
Like mom taught was like, why don't you get a job? Why don't you work on becoming an accountant?
So silly. Like knowing,
Sit
and
behind Tammy, the person who loves to talk all day long,
right,
sit behind a desk.
if you've met you, right. If someone's met you, they would not say yes. That accounting is
Right.
your field, right?
Although there are people who thrive in those situations. Why are we not helping people to find the best in themselves? And this brings me back to thinking about how I view now how important it is to cherish what I call your knights of the round table.
Yes, yes, agreed.
We all have people that sit at what I call the knights of our round table, and it's usually about 5 to 10 people at most, mostly five. And you look at I mean, our both of our parents are passed, but if they were, good parents, sit at your table
Right.
of counsel
You're
where
talking
you're
about
going to go
like
to
a
two
good
or three
friend,
best friends.
a partner, right? A sometimes a relative or even a child could be like someone who's in your corner and adult now and able to be, like there for you and right.
When you forget who you are, they remind you in the best
That's
possible
right.
way.
That's right.
That's what your Knights of the Round Table is. And I think of it as, because we need to give people a visual. So this is my visual. You're sitting in a theater in the round, and here's your Knights of the Round Table. And you have 7, 8 seats there, and they're filled with people that you love and love you. And then picture a theater in the round, all the way around, the seats go up to infinity, because we can't put anybody out of our lives.
Right.
There's no out of our lives. There's just moving to from the seat at the table. Sometimes people stop deserving that seat at the table. So maybe you move them for a while into the front row, and still not working. Too much negative influence. Row
Next
five.
row.
So
Next row.
my rule of thumb is who gets a seat at my table and how far back I need to put them in the rows, because there's no out of your life. People are, even if they're a thought, a memory, they're in your life.
That's right.
How far back do I need to put them from my stage, my nights at the round table, to where if they can be in the front row, but I'm still feeling bad about them. But I put them in row 10. The rule of thumb is how how far back, how far out of my life do they have to be where I can still wish them well?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Because for me, I know every single person is going, if I have a thought about someone and they're sitting far enough back where they don't really have a day-to-day influence on me, I can breathe and say, yeah, I can wish them well.
Right.
For someone who's been extreme, where I've had extreme abuse, they're in a row 1,000. There's
Yeah.
still a memory, so I can't make them out of it, but they have
Right.
no influence on my life.
That's right. That's right.
But why have this language? They can only be as close as I can wish them well,
Right.
because coming from love is the most important thing for me. And so wishing someone well may be the best I can do. And there's going to be people that say, I can never wish that person well. Then you have to move them so far back that they're really, really. I'm not saying that everybody needs to feel the way I do, that, I need to wish everybody well. But that's a sort of a benchmark for me.
That makes sense. Yes. Right.
Can you picture it?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I like that. That you like, you bump someone, someone might be really close and it just feels uncomfortable. It's not, it's their, it's not right. And you say like, okay, like if I took a little more space for this person, how would it be like? And sometimes it could just be like that little bit more space
Whew.
is right, is enough. It's like
Where
relief.
breathe easy. But this is, and again, what are we trying, what are the words we want to lean into?
Right.
The word relief is on the way to happiness.
Right.
And also, people have a tendency to think, I belong at your round table no matter what I do.
Right.
We have parents that feel that way. We
Mhm.
have children that feel that way.
Yeah.
We have good friends.
Relatives, people who've been in our
Sometimes,
lives a long time, like sort of you get a legacy pass that for the rest of my life you get to tell me what to do and why and how I'm doing it
no,
wrong.
no, 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 you
Right,
don't. And
right,
that's the thing, is that we have to power, the power we have in our life is only pertaining to us.
right,
We have no power
right,
except for, why do I love The Wizard of Oz?
right.
Dorothy.
Because
Why,
you had it all along.
you had it all along. But where was the power?
Yeah, in her.
In
Right.
her, in her.
I have there's something that you had said a little while back, and I wanted to, if you feel complete with this topic or getting on complete
Sure.
with this topic. This is so we were talking about the Milgram experiment, right? Okay, where and a couple of thoughts were occurring. So let me just kind of presence this. You,
Absolutely.
you know that idea in quantum mechanics is like you can observe the trajectory of a particle, the direction of a particle, or you can observe the position of a particle, but you can't do both. Okay, like that idea.
You can do both, but not at the same time.
You do both, but not at the same time, right? So you can't know both at the same time. The more you know about one, the less you know about the other. Okay. I
Oh, can I ask you a question before you get into
Sure,
the experiment?
sure.
To make sure I have it correct.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, the actual, what I've learned is that energy is either a wave,
Right.
which is what you're saying, or a particle.
Correct.
And am and what I have learned through the rewatching over and over on YouTube, the double slit experiment, was that we actually are participating in, whether we personally, Tammy, Mark, every other being on this planet, is that we are actually participating. When something is moving as a wave,
Yes.
our view of it, and they've proven this by having cameras view something, anything viewing something
The
turns a
measurement, taking the
wave,
measurement, right? Turns a wave into a particle,
turns something that's not
right.
solid into something solid. That's how matter is actually, the
Exists.
observation of matter is what creates matter.
Yes, that is a defensible position. Absolutely. And I
Right.
like it if there's any, and then of course there's, like, you could say like, oh, but is this science? Does this science really apply to, life in this at this? I don't, so my answer to that is always, if you use it as a metaphor, it does. Okay. So I like the metaphor. And the way that I'm using this, the idea is, I think a disempowering way to interact with the world is to keep looking at it and saying, I want to know what's true. I want to know what's true. I want to know what's true. I want to, like, in other words, I want to keep making measurements and keep finding out where the particles are, right? And you can spend your life doing that. Whereas another way of approaching things is, I want to know what's possible. I want to know what's possible. Want to know what's possible. Okay. So there's these two fundamental different ways. It's like, if you look at the world as this static thing, and I think that the idea of looking at the world as a static thing goes back, it's a Newtonian way of looking at things. In
Right.
other words, it doesn't matter what your perspective is. The world is this thing, and we're trying to figure out what the world is. Whereas, wait a minute, I am a participant in the world. Okay. I'm a participant, and I'm going to apply this idea very specifically. This idea of, instead of trying to figure out what's happening, to try to understand how I can help to bring about something positive. Okay. So that's my setup.
Hmm.
Talk about the Milgram experiment. Okay. So the
That was the experiment
that
about
was the
where
experiment with the shocks, with the
the
shock.
doctor and the shocks. Okay.
So an observational way of looking at that experiment, the observational way of looking at that experiment is, what does the data show? The data shows that, I'm making up numbers, but it was a surprisingly large number, something like, 81% of people,
Yeah.
surprisingly, because you wouldn't think so, can be influenced to essentially shock a person to death. It didn't really happen, but influence to shock a person to death because a guy with glasses, a clipboard, and a white coat, and a 45-year-old guy with thinning hair and a mousy demeanor, like, please continue with the experiment, sir. Like, science depends on this result. Like, that can influence a person. Okay, so observationally, 81% of people, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. So let's say that. Now I'm going to take another experiment and look at it the same way. I remember, and then I'm going to take one more, and then we're going to flip it. We're going to flip a pancake. I'm using your stuff, right? Okay.
Okay.
Um, Weight loss. Okay. So this is I can state this statistic, and it's pretty defensible. So if you lose a significant amount of weight this year, let's say you've lost 30 pounds this year, there is a defensible statistic that says 96% of people who lose weight this year will have gained back all or most of the weight within 4 years. Okay. So and again, like, these observational things, they always end up depressing, don't they? That's depressing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it turns out that 81% of people will shock a stranger to death because asked. And now weight loss is impossible. Okay, now the third one. And this is the one that we essentially know. But like, and I don't know what the numbers are, but just in your life. Okay. What percent of people who take piano lessons as a child grow up to be people who happily, competently play the piano as adults? Well, it's not a lot, right? And then you could say the same thing about, we talked about speaking a language, at times, like how difficult it is to learn a language. How many people who take a French or a Spanish or a German class in high school turn into the 30-year-old who goes to that country and has a conversation with the waiter, right? Not many. Okay.
Hmm.
So here we have a lot of depressing statistics and reasons to not try, to not care, blah, blah, blah. Okay. When looking at it from the observational standpoint, I want to find out where the particles are, rather than let's see how we can influence the trajectory. So here's the question I interject to all of those things. Okay. You're telling me that 4% of people who lose weight will, surprisingly, maintain the weight loss. You're telling me that
Yeah.
19% of people who were subjected to that Milgram experiment said, no, I won't participate in. And there's a movie version of the actual experiment where you see a guy early in the film saying, no, sir, I will not continue this experiment. And no, I don't care what you say. I'm not doing it. Okay. Then the question for me is, or the people who do become piano players as adults. For me, the question, and this is the question for life coaches, this is the question I think for everybody
I
is,
think I know where you're going with this, and I like it.
so what is it that those people are doing that the other people aren't doing? And
Bingo.
how can we create large helpings of, I'll have 2 scoops of the thing that keeps me from gaining the weight back in 4 years. Thank you. What would that be? And why are we not asking that question?
That's
Why are we saying
in a
science tells us
nutshell,
and leaving it there? Right?
in a nutshell, that is what I'm talking about.
Right.
When we have studied misery for
Yes.
so many years. We coach to misery, we have therapy to misery, and there, like, let me tell you, there are times when we need our trauma to be heard. I'm very, very, very I'm 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 not, there's not talking about being heard or being understood. But when we start dispensing, you know, help with, when all we're studying are the people that didn't get it right,
Right.
that is completely opposed to what
Yeah.
in other areas like sports,
Yeah.
they study Michael Jordan like he's a science experiment. What did he do?
Right.
Right. What did he, and in the world of sports, they're getting it. And I like it. They're studying,
Right.
what is this person? They're not studying what people are doing wrong. They're
That's right.
taking much more time, they're much farther ahead than
Right.
mental health is.
Right.
With I started to sound like like people would ask me, what do you do as a coach? I'm like, figure out what's amazing about someone and build on that.
Right.
Where, and for a lot of years, I would have very sensible people saying, oh, not a nice little idea,
Sweet
Tammy.
little, right.
But
In
I
a
am my own
world
client.
full of misery and in a world full of no hope and in a world full of endless studies that tell us that you can't do this and you won't be able to do that and it's impossible to do this. It's like, and isn't it sweet that you're so positive? And it's like, wait a minute. I'm talking back to that. I'm talking back to that.
Yeah,
Sweet.
because
It isn't sweet. It's
because
something else.
originally I was my first client. I
Yeah.
have been through unhappiness, and the idea of unhappiness to happiness, I'm still on that journey.
Right.
So yeah, I want to know, and I'm all, true to form, on a weight loss journey, like many people. That, so what is it that we want to delve into? And as I started working with the things about clients that were amazing, unique, sparkly, fabulous, all these superlatives that people told me to take out of my language as a life coach, it's like, it's annoying. I had people say that to me. Because I work alongside therapists, and I have some lovely therapists, but a lot of times it's like, take it down a notch, Tammy. And I'm like, these people are coming in there who've been knocked down so many notches that one of the first sessions, I usually ask people to tell me 10 amazing things about themselves. And they look at me as if I have 6 heads. So I don't want to take this down a notch. Like, I am looking for what is unique and amazing about you. Because aren't we always asking, isn't that telling? I want I wanted in my life for somebody to tell me what was unique and amazing about me,
Right.
to build on it. I knew what was wrong with me.
Everybody knows what's
Your
wrong with
kids know
them.
what's wrong with, like, the kids
Right.
that you work with know what's wrong with them. Their
Right.
parents know what's wrong with them. They don't know what's right with them. Like, if you went to a parent and said, you know, this kid, they know their kids are doing badly.
Most of
Most of the
them
time,
are.
they can't do more than fourth grade math themselves.
Most of them are amazing. I mean, I'm just like, I mean, I really do find that I am in awe of, I mean, gosh darn it, they certainly are far ahead of where I was. I mean, and where I was at that age is no benchmark, like I was lying in my, at age 15 or whatever, like, I was like, just 15 was like a sort of a turnaround year for me when I was like, I mentioned in the last video that I had like, really hard few years leading up to sixth grade. And then I had a couple of hard years coming out of it. 15 was like, I got hold of things that I loved and I got hold of connections. I began to make connections. But even so, I see that these kids are they never lost it. Like they never fell down a well and then had to drag themselves back up just to get back to ground, up to ground
Well,
level.
that's called some really good parenting,
Yeah, that's
and
called really
that's a
good parent.
beautiful thing. But
Yeah,
when you get the one kid or for me with life coaching, many times everybody is showing up with sort of a particular thing that they're struggling with.
right.
Like, I don't know why I'm underachieving at my job. I'm not making enough money. Um, I've had 6 boyfriends in the past 6 years, and you know, and there are some hard truths we have to accept. Like, okay, if I've had 3 boyfriends in a row that are similar, I am the common denominator.
Right.
So I'm picking them. But I want to really quickly bring this back around to we only have control of,
Yeah.
and we don't always have control of our
And
bodies.
we don't always have control. Right. Exactly.
We don't have where
Something
there's
is,
one thing we
yeah.
have control of.
Hmm.
The only thing.
Right.
Like Nelson Mandela, I think, was the person who said, like, and some people like that who've said, even you can put me in prison, but this is my own little private Idaho.
Yeah.
That's what I got. So we don't have control always over the money that we have in our life or the job that we have. We have that, we already are starting to just question after we have 4 kids instead of before we have 4 kids. So we also don't know how we're going to feel when we make a very what seems like a reasonable decision that doesn't take us to a happy place, that takes us to a place we don't want to be. But in this moment, we have the ability to, with a walking around with a broken mirror about ourselves, to find a mirror, whether it's a person, a journal, more importantly, internally, let's start having a relationship with our inner guidance. We
Yes.
have something built into us,
Yes.
and I don't find many people talking about it
Right.
because that would be too easy.
Right.
If I have what might have been the difference between the guy who said, I'm not pressed, like someone just screamed when I pressed a button.
Hmm. I'm
Maybe
not
that's a
doing it. I'm not
coincidence.
pressing it
I'm not
again.
doing it.
Right.
That person,
Right.
I would wonder if they have a relationship with their inner guidance, and their inner guidance says,
Right.
I am no good, no bueno,
Right.
not gonna
I
press
want
the
to, right. I
button.
want to know more. I want to know who is that guy. I don't want to know like, yeah, people are walking lockstep. Most people are sheep. It's like, got it. It's like, and if I want to hear that message,
Next,
I can
this podcast
open,
was named
right.
for that reason. We're calling it Beyond because we want to start beyond
That,
where we
that
are
stuff.
dissecting
Right.
misery.
Right.
We have plenty of misery to dissect, and sometimes we're going to have to go there to show you, like we did last time, there are some unhappy events.
Right.
Before we get like I definitely want to talk about a few more miraculous events before we get off today.
Hmm.
And and at the same time, this podcast was named for that reason. We are starting out where we are beyond dissecting misery, but that's not enough. Okay, I'm not going to talk about misery anymore. The universe hates a vacuum.
Hmm.
So you can't erase it, you have to displace it.
Correct.
If you're
Correct.
always talking about miserable things, fighting for your limitations, as we spoke about in many podcasts, you have to replace it with positive questions. And again, it's we people love to attack the idea of pathological positivity, positivity in the face of certain death or misery. Like that's not what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
We're talking about the discomfort. Think about the discomfort of positivity for the the four or five people out of the 100 that pressed the button that everybody just pressed and they heard the screaming in the other room. The four or five people that said, I'm not pressing that button. That's a kind of positivity, a fortitude to say, I have a moral compass. I
Correct.
have a belief system.
Right.
I have an inner guidance. Maybe they don't have the words for it. I have my religion says no. My gut instinct says no. I
My
pressed it
mama
once.
said no.
My
Right.
mama said no. I got a good mama.
Yeah.
This is what we are talking about. We want to study success as if our life depends on it. Study happiness as if our life depends on it because it does.
Right. Yes.
Our and that is the difference between dissecting, well, those 84 people press the button, and I
Right.
wonder what makes people so bad that they would press that button.
Right.
Maybe nothing except for they haven't learned part
Right.
two.
I'll tell you what, it's
We
interesting. It's very interesting what makes people so horrible that they like, probably what it is a thing called agreeableness. So
absolutely.
agreeableness is one of those traits that we inherited from the primates that we've come from. They gathered in groups. We weren't cats. Cats, they hunt on their own and then they have a little family and they hunt and then they go out and hunt on their own all, but when they grow up. Humans, we don't come from a group of lower, quote unquote, lower animals that did that. We're we live in groups and agreeableness, evidently. There's a great book by Rutger Bregman called Humankind, which I highly recommend. And it's
Okay.
basically taking the all of the negativity, and he really does a good job of flipping the pancake on a whole bunch of things in this
It's
book
great.
because the theory, it's like it's coming away from the theory that humans are inherently bad and saying, let's talk back to that. Let's see if science can show otherwise. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that humans are agreeable. That's how we mostly got on in groups by being agreeable with each other. And the thing is, you could take that trait and then you can twist it. You can manipulate someone. A person who's agreeable is also potentially manipulable. And that's a
Oh
problem.
well, and I, I have a story about that. Someone
Yeah,
who I
please.
really one of the great therapists that I worked with said to me when she met me that I was one of the most manipulatable people she had ever met. She said it's ironic. She said it's almost like you in your coaching, you don't get manipulated at all. She sat in on the many sessions, we shared many clients. And in my personal life, somehow, you know, my identity was wrapped around because of where I came from, the idea of not making waves.
Right.
In on a job, I've had so many years of you know, being an entrepreneur. And I even consider like my first babysitting job, I was an entrepreneur. The funny story is that, for me, work was the escape for me. I was a little, I remember asking mom when I was going on 12 years old. Can I start babysitting? And she said, yeah, go ahead. I don't care. So 12 was the age. She said it was okay. It was, I guess, the 1970s. 12-year-old were taking care of infants. I don't know. So when I became a babysitter, I became an entrepreneur because I thought this is a way for me. So the rules were different while I was working. I created, I took it very seriously. In the first summer, one of the things that mom was very good was manipulating us with money.
Yeah.
So she was like, if I'm giving you money for clothes, and we had money, I get to pick the clothes out. So when I was 12 and I couldn't even, the only job available that I knew of I don't, maybe selling,
For a
maybe
boy, it was
newspapers,
mowing lawns. Okay.
mowing lawns or delivering
Delivering
newspapers, right?
newspapers. Right. Yeah.
But for me, like for a best idea, and I used to pay $1 an hour
Mhm.
to babysit.
Amazing.
That's telling you, right? $1 an hour was the going rate.
Yeah.
And I got the idea for myself. I said to her, if I babysit and I make money this summer babysitting, can I use that money for anything I want to? She was like, it's your money. You made it. Thinking I'm going to work 3, 4 hours a week, $4 or $5 a week, right? I was like, okay, this is amazing. So I got a date book, made a date book. Who bought a date book at the time? And I went around place to place to everybody I knew that had a kid. And I worked 40 hours a week for 10 weeks.
Wow.
At the end of that summer, in a little paper bag, I had used to slide the dollars in every day. I had $400 to spend on clothes. So I created an identity of success in that way. Like at work, and then I went on to waitress for a few years and I did many other things. All of them sort of had an entrepreneurial aspect to them. So again, identity, right? My identity in the household around friends was agreeable and quiet and subservient, really, really. And on the job, people were, letting me be responsible for their kids. So it was amazing. And I thought, okay, so how does one have a solid identity in one area of their life? And we're not the same. We're not the same people everywhere. I had a very, very, yes, whatever you say to most friends, to most, to relatives. I used to do cook Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter holiday. I was just a very agreeable person, and that was noticeably different than the person I was at work.
Right.
And so what I realized was that I was working a muscle of knowing who I was and having a strong opinion about myself as a working person, a strong identity around I'm good at this and I'm going to get better at this. And I always did. But in my personal life, people could influence me very easily. And so being agreeable, that's a really good word. Not wanting to make waves, not also doubting my own sanity. When, I have had many reasons over the course of a lifetime to doubt my own sanity.
That's
And
right.
somebody who's got it more together in all the areas, like I'm trying to combine that and become less agreeable in my personal life and to bring in that inner guidance for me now I bring everywhere. This
Right.
feels off. If I hear pressing a button, hear someone screaming in another room,
Yeah. You
I
would think,
am,
though, when you're told the story, you would think, oh, I know what I would do. And it's like, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. We don't know. Right.
but you can teach somebody
Right.
how to feel their inner guidance,
Right. And what I would
just like you can teach somebody to feel and listen. If when someone's inner critic is running the show, driving the bus,
right.
it feels icky. It feels off.
Yes.
So this is teachable. Why are we here? Because we want to teach something.
Correct. Correct. Yes. Yes.
You wanted to teach that kid who was you thought was maybe they're not putting the time in. And you see this kid crying because they
And you wouldn't
want to
call
get
it
the
cry,
answer right.
but he looked like he could, right? He looked like he could have. And that
But
was to
that,
see who he really was. That was who he really was. Right.
right. But to have to say, I'm going to help him without having language,
Right.
what you do for the kids that are doing relatively well, you help to shift their identity to, I'm going to do really well. I just have to do these few. You're not, you're teaching math, but you're helping them create an identity.
Right.
And in the world of coaching, I'm helping people to create an identity based on what's amazing about them,
Yes.
what feels on and what feels off,
And acknowledging that and getting
and
them.
to understand when I'm hearing something that makes me that sounds fearful and negative, it's a sign.
Mhm.
And when it's like the person that says, I'm not pressing that button, okay, I'm not pressing that button, there has been something that happened. And how do we study this further is the question I hear you asking.
That's exactly how do
And
we, right? And how do we, let's think that the soup we live in, I mean, is there's an all this is an analogy I make. It's like of all the products in any supermarket, how many of them would you actually buy, eat, give to your friends and children? Not many,
wow.
right? Think about it. Think about that. Like, think about all the products. If there's a million different products, I've heard that a big supermarket can have literally a million different products, which
Really?
I know it's crazy. I know it's absolutely insane, right? A really, really big supermarket have a million products. Okay. So of that, how many of them are things that you would actually, in your right mind, buy, cook, put on your table, and serve to people you love, including children, right? Not many. Well, that's the ratio of what the world is presenting to us in terms of noise versus signal, right? Like there may be, I mean, I'm like, maybe there's like 1,000 items in that particular supermarket. Of a million things that are available, there are 1,000 things that I would like, yeah, I would, yeah, okay. Yeah, chicken breast. Okay, I can get behind that. Tuna fish, I can get behind that. Lettuce is good, but the
And I
entire
would ask you a question,
yeah,
and then we're
sure.
almost coming
Yeah.
to, but I would ask you a question. And wouldn't you say this is true for most people?
Hmm.
Every week they buy about the same 20 items.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. My staple.
Okay, so
Right.
right, you buy your staples.
Right.
So what this podcast could do, what
Hmm.
I'm trying to do with my clients, and I think that you're trying to do with yours, is when people say, how can you change when there's so many possibilities out there? How can you change the big picture? And I said, when you come right down to it, we could, if we sat down together in the next 2 weeks, we could write a list of 10 things that people could learn. And if they worked on those same 10 things, what's the difference between my inner critic and inner guidance? Is the universe, world, life based on, if how can I grasp the idea that love is more powerful than fear?
Right.
Really teach that. Love is more powerful than fear. The only thing I have control over in this moment in time, or almost any moment in time, is the way I think. And another thing, I'm just going to give a few, that my feelings are telling me something.
Right.
My feelings emotionally and the way that my body feels is
Right.
trying to tell me something.
Yes.
There is a very short list out of the
Sure.
idea that there are a million
There's
things to
the
learn out
possible
there to
things you could do out
become
there.
the
Right.
best version of yourself.
Exactly.
That's what there are a million things that we can learn that can hurt us. And
Right.
there's probably a very short list of things,
Right.
if we learn them down to if we took them from our brains to our bones, as my best friend Beth would say,
Yes.
would change our lives.
Right. And I think the way
And
to think of, the way to think of that is, I like to use that food analogy is, if I am unintentionally simply bringing the staples that I'm bringing into the house are full of sugar, full of chemicals, full of junk, full of idle calories, full of bad juju, bad karma, or whatever. It's like, it's
true,
like Count Chocula, Reese's Pieces, the list goes on. You know what I'm saying? Like, and
right.
nothing on Count, like, a bowl of Count Chocula is a little bowl of heaven. But, like a box of Count Chocula a week bringing into the house is a recipe for disaster. If you can get intentional and say, like, so what is it I'm bringing into my house? And what could I be bringing into the house that would be wholesome, natural, good, like for my body, working with myself? Right. Of those million things that are out there, I'm bringing 200 like over the course of a year into my house. What if I switched out 150 of them?
True.
What would my life look like? What would my body look like? What would my health look like? And it's the same
Right.
mentally.
And that's a good note to end on, because the thing is that there aren't that there they can be complex topics or things that we have to go over. Love is more powerful than fear.
Right.
That could be, you know, a lot of conversation to convince, or not to convince, to help someone to tap into
Right.
that knowing and that understanding. They're
Yes.
going to have to live a little bit with that.
Yes.
Just like eating more healthy foods might take a little time to see your body change.
Yes. Agree.
But when with the right ingredients, things will change.
Correct.
At least this is our experience. We're
Right.
not trying, and we're not coaching from other people's experience. We're
No,
coaching from
no.
our experience.
Right.
And our experience comes from different levels of unhappiness and is moving on to different levels of happiness.
That's right.
But we don't have a million things to teach.
Right.
We want to go deep on the things that we've noticed really make a difference.
Correct. Correct. That's right.
And on that note, maybe we can
Yeah.
wrap this up for today.
It feels like we've covered an awful lot, and I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this
Me
conversation.
too. Me
Yes.
too. As usual, very grateful for this. So, if you are interested in seeing us again, and we hope that you will like and subscribe and comment. And we're getting a lot of offline comments, which is amazing. But we're up for the task of getting some online comments. We can handle it, and it will be something we can bring into the conversation, because this conversation is starting a little bit beyond, but it's going on
Yes.
to we hope a place that we will meet you there
Yes.
in a
Agreed.
happier place.
Absolutely.
So have a great week, Mark.
Thank you. You too, Tammy. Take care.
Take care.